Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are so excited to see you all joining our live stream. Today, we will be talking about the Global Empathetic Leadership. As always, we'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, CR England, for making this road trip possible. We are just so excited to have the opportunity to talk about all these incredible topics each week with all of you. This week, Taylor, our fearless leader, has been pulled in on some meetings with the governor of Utah. He's been working so closely and so hard on some of the COVID economic relief, and so he's unable to join us. Megan Kawaguchi and myself are going to hop in as moderators today. So we are so excited to be here with all of you. We have an incredible lineup of panelists, global empathetic leaders themselves, Mindy, Davison, David Marriott, and Alan Beard. And I'm going to invite them to provide a brief introduction, and we will hop into the questions.
Mindy, why don't you get started?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. But my name is Mindy Davison. I am the Director of International and Global Sales Human Resources for Delta. So my team and I cover all of the employees outside the US in over 50 countries, as well as our global sales organization across the globe as well. And I went to the University of Utah for my undergrad. I have an undergraduate degree in sociology and interpersonal communication. And then I also have my MBA from the David Eccles School of Business. So that's my connection to the U.
Hi, and I'm David Marriott. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in this area and went to the University of Utah, graduated in 1999 with a degree in finance from the Eccles School of Business. And I currently am president of our U.S. full service managed hotels. And there's about 320 full service hotels that I oversee. I do have a background in sales. I spent about 10 years working in our sales organization, led our global sales efforts. And it's a pleasure and honor to be with all of you today.
Hi, I'm Alan Beard. I'm currently residing in Arlington, Virginia, and I'm pleased to be part of this panel with two companies that are titans in American business, Delta and Marriott. I too started at the University of Utah, did my undergraduate work there, came back to Washington, did my graduate studies here, and thought I was just passing through and ended up staying here for the next 30 some odd years. So that's my connection to the University of Utah, and I'm just pleased to be part of the panel.
Great. Well, again, I can't thank you guys all enough for joining us today. It is so great to see you all. I want to start off by throwing our first question that we have over to you, David. One of Managed by Marriott's guiding principles that you guys, strive to follow along with performance and partnership is your focus on your people. How have you incorporated this principle, that the company's value is the depth and breadth of your talent into your culture?
Yeah, it has been a guiding principle for us since the company began in 1927 when my grandparents drove from Salt Lake City, Utah in their Model T Ford across the country to open their 9-seat root beer stand in Washington, D.C. And they really established a people first culture from the beginning, making sure that they were taking care of their associates so that the associates could take care of the guests and the guests could come back over and over again. I think that's one of the most repeated phrases that you'll hear within Marriott, but they really put those words into practice very early on. They hired a doctor to place on their payroll well before there was healthcare available to the average worker, so that the doctor could help tend to their associates' needs. And that's always been an enormous focus for us. It remains our core pillar to all of our values. Our other values really are embracing change, pursuing excellence, acting with integrity, and serving the community. But even as we have had to make some really tough decisions during the pandemic, that wouldn't be seen as people first decisions because of the stress that our business is under. We've tried to make sure that we're transparent, that we're having honest communications and discussions with our associates, and that we are being as proactive as we can in those discussions and in those conversations. And we've ensured that even those individuals that have had to be placed on furlough or short-term layoffs, that we've ensured that we've helped pay for their health care and ensure that they've been able to hold on to their health care during a pandemic like this. And we hope to bring as many people back as we can as business returns. We have been able to see some steady improvement and bring people back into the hotels, but it is an environment unlike anything we've ever faced. But we continue to make people the core of our focus and our business.
Thank you, David. And I like, you mentioned both the empathy towards your employees, but also your customer base. And those are two things that I'm really looking forward to diving into more. Mindy, I want to turn the next question over to you. Also, talking about kind of core values. At Delta, one of your core values is servant leadership. How does this relate to empathy? Is empathy towards your employees kind of the same thing as David? Is that just as important as that empathy towards your customer base?
Absolutely. I think for me, servant leadership is care for customers, communities, and each other. And I can truly say at Delta, the one thing that we always think about first is our employees. Because we truly believe if you take care of your employees, they're going to take care of your customers, and then their customers take care of your shareholders, right? So it's this virtuous circle. And it's so critical that we start with our people first. And I feel the same way. During the pandemic, it has been such a tough time on our industry, but I can say that from our CEO all the way down, the people have come first, their safety, and then our customers' safety, and really making sure we're making business decisions that at the heart of it have all of our communities, our customers, and our employees first. From things like blocking the middle seat, that's a tough financial decision, but it's right for our customers. To the electrostatic spraying of the aircraft to make sure our employees and our customers are safe, right? To make sure that people can travel and get where they need to go in a safe manner. And so for me, the servant leadership concept is so critical to who we are in our culture, from our founder, C.E. Woolman, to our current CEO, Ed Bastian, making tough decisions that we believe are right, even though sometimes people may think they're not exactly best for the bottom line, but just putting people first.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think something that stands out between both what you and David said is that kind of community focus and the community building aspect. Alan, I'd love to throw the third question over to you. You're over at Interlink Capital Management. And over there, you guys have an extensive portfolio of international business development and management. How has leading with empathy given you an advantage in the global business and in the global market?
That's a great question, because unlike Marriott and Delta, we don't have thousands of employees. We have a core of about 30 employees and contractors, but we have numerous relationships overseas. Our company focuses on emerging markets. And one of the things that we find, and certainly I have found in my career, is that American businesses or business people tend to be very transactional in their orientation. You're going to do this and I'm going to do that. And having lived abroad and worked abroad, what you find is that this transactional nature of the way that we tend to conduct business in the United States can sometimes be rather jarring, particularly in emerging markets where relationships are important. And understanding those relationships and frankly having empathy for the culture and the way the business is done where you are operating is really important in my opinion, in being able to be successful in those emerging markets. In finance specifically, there's this concept that really gained a lot of traction after the Oh my heavens, the light went off. I'm not moving around enough. In the last financial crisis, financial institutions really began to focus on this idea of know your customer. And from a US perspective, that really means understanding them and understanding the good, the bad, and the ugly. I take that concept of know your customer one step further, and that is having empathy for your customer, understanding them above and beyond what their financial statements look like. And I think that's critical, especially in emerging markets.
Thank you. Something that really kind of struck with what all of you guys said is, obviously we're here talking about empathy, but showing empathy, from a customer base, showing it to an employee base, but empathy isn't something that everybody is born with. There are people that are naturally more empathetic. How do you guys as leaders develop empathy in your employees, and what strategies have you seen that have worked really well in your different companies? And I'd love to hear, from the perspective of David and Mindy working for companies with thousands and thousands of employees, but also for Alan, who works with a smaller group of employees. How do you teach that to your employees, and what strategies do you use?
Who wants to jump in first?
David, it sounds like you do.
I'd be happy to. My father tells a story that he's used very frequently when he was a supply corps officer in the Navy. He was out at a family ranch in Virginia, and his father, my grandfather, had a really good relationship with Dwight Eisenhower, and so they had the President of the United States out to the ranch for a weekend to do some hunting and spend some time together. And the weather was unpredictable. It was cold and rainy, and they were sitting inside by the fire. And here's my dad, who's a supply corps officer in the Navy, down very far down the chain of command from obviously where President Eisenhower was sitting. And President Eisenhower looked at my father and he said, "Well, Bill, we're sitting in here by the fire, and it's raining outside. We're here to hunt, but what do you think we should do?" And my dad was just struck by the fact that the President of the United States asked somebody all the way down the chain of command what he thought they should do on that day. And I think that was something that always stuck with him, and he made that a really important piece of his leadership style. And he'll tell you that those are the four most important words that you can ask in business. What do you think? And so I think developing that empathetic leadership is really all about creating an environment of trust and an environment where people feel that they have a voice and they can speak up, and that they get used to their leaders asking for their opinion and their thoughts on how to handle issues and challenges of the day. And the best ideas generally come from the bottom up. And so it's a great style and a great approach, but I think that helps build that trust, which can lead to that empathetic leadership style, where people know that their voice will be heard, and when they know that their opinions matter, and that you have leaders that listen to that, take that input and react.
I agree so much with that. I think, building your culture to where empathy is an important part of it, listening to your employees all the way down and up in the organization, right? I think for me, that getting visible, getting to know your people, getting to understand their needs, and especially in a global environment, they do vary quite differently in every culture and every part of the world. And just really engaging deep in the organization, I think then you attract the right kind of people who have empathy, who lead with empathy, really stating your values of, what is important to you as a company. For us, it's servant leadership, it's trust, it's respect. Those things we talk about in all of our day-to-day activities and everything that we do. So I think that, for us as leaders, it's a privilege to lead. And I think if you come from that perspective that, this is something I have to earn every single day at Delta to make sure that I continue to do everything that I can to hear my employees, to react to their needs, and, to really understand where they're coming from continues to be something that I think, is how you kind of drive it through the organization. One person, every person behaving that way.
So sometimes I've found that the best lessons are learned oftentimes by people who make the biggest mistakes. And early on in my career, I worked with a small consulting firm that we had a lot of success. We ultimately sold that company to what is now JP Morgan Chase. And so in terms of the remuneration, it was a very exciting and wonderful place to be. But the management culture was extremely toxic and very hierarchical, very intimidating, where frankly, a lot of the employees were operating under fear. And fear can be a powerful motivator, and in the short run can obtain pretty remarkable results. But in the long run, we had huge amounts of turnover, and it was ultimately a very frustrating experience. And after I left that firm, I determined that whatever firm I joined with going forward at that point, I would not be in that kind of an environment. Creating the more collegial approach where people's opinions both up and down the line matter is, I think, really important. And in today's world, I think it's almost an absolute necessity, given how easy it is for people to come and go. I've got children who are in their 20s, and one works on Wall Street, and he, in that environment, they think of nothing of spending a year in an organization and then moving on. And that may work for somebody in their 20s, but it's very difficult to manage if you've got that kind of turnover. And so creating the kind of empathy and collegial environment, I think, is really critical in today's environment.
All right. So you all kind of touched on it, but I'd love for you to have the opportunity to go a little bit more in depth. As leaders of companies that operate in countries across the globe, how do you focus on uniting your employees that are coming from different backgrounds? They have different perspectives and values, to all work towards those same goals alongside each other with empathy for one another.
I mean, I'll start there. I think having employees in so many different places, I do think the core values of your company have to remain the same across the organization, right? How they appear and how people show them might be a little bit different depending on their culture. But at the end of the day, those core values, I think, are the same. And for me, it's really about how you communicate with people, connecting with them regularly, making sure that everybody's aligned on the direction of the business, but also being there for your employees the same way you would in the US, you do everywhere else. But understanding the cultural nuances are important. Even small things, for me are, when you schedule a conference call, people don't think about it, how often you schedule a conference call that's a global call at 3 a.m. in Asia. And so it's just something that I try to remind my clients about inside of my organization, on being mindful of different cultures, different time zones, and really trying to make sure that we take care of our employees the same way globally. So that's what hit my mind when you first asked that question. It is tough because, especially in this pandemic, we've been dealing with this since January, and it hit Asia first. And so really taking care of those employees, and then you kind of saw it roll across Europe and then into the US, but really, being there for people, having their back, making sure they know that we care about them has been something that I have found is quite valuable, especially in troubling times.
Yeah, I think Mindy's exactly right about how core values translate across, and they have to remain the same. And I touched on our 5 core values of putting people first, um, embracing change, acting with integrity, serving the community, and pursuing excellence. And I really do think those are values that do translate globally. And living those values and embracing them is critically important. One of the real important mechanisms that we have put in place to ensure that our culture and core values remain strong around the globe, we have business councils. So in each and every market around the globe, we have a council made up primarily of general managers of hotels within various markets. And those general managers work together to ensure that our people are being supported, that our customers are being supported, that we're engaged in community activities, in serving in any way in which we can, that they're engaged in challenges that they might need to have a unified approach with the government or other municipalities on issues that might, impact travel and tourism. And so those business councils are vitally important to us in terms of pulling through culture and core values and ensuring that we really show forth empathetic leadership around the globe. And that is, we believe really strongly that our general managers, the leaders of our individual hotels that are almost like CEOs of their own business unit, that those individuals truly are the stewards of our culture and core values. They really carry that torch, and acting within that structure of the business councils really enables them to get all of our associates within those markets engaged in the community and engaged in what's important for them and for our customers. So it's proven to be a really solid structure for us to help pull through our culture and our core values in an organization that continues to grow year after year.
I kind of look at it from the popular term right now that we talk about, diversity. And, we as Americans, especially people of my age, still tend to think of America as being, at one point, we were 40% of the world economy. And sort of the way that America did things was, we're here and you do it our way or else. We're now 20% of the world's economy and we're only 5% of the world's population. And so there is a lot of other people out there that have a way of doing things that may not be better, but it's different and it's worked for them. And, we have to be respectful and empathetic of the way that they do business if we're going to be successful. And I oftentimes lament the fact that I still see a lot of American executives who will fly to a country in Africa. They don't speak the language. They don't learn the cultures. They kind of come in, they expect to do it the way you might do it in America. And consequently, they get frustrated very quickly. And I compare that to some of our European and Asian competitors and frankly partners who frequently learn the language. They learn the culture. They understand that having a few meals and breaking bread and trying to have empathy with their potential customers is an important foundation to build a business on. And again, I come back to the fact that still oftentimes American executives are very transactional. They're there, we want to get this done. I've got 2 days to do it and I don't really have time for this other stuff. That other stuff in those countries is really important. And if you don't get that done, you're never going to get to the main event, or at least the main event from the American perspective. And so I think the idea of diversity, while sometimes American executives have resisted that in the past, in some ways it can also be our competitive advantage. So actually in our business, even though we're small, we have A number of our employees were born somewhere else. They speak the local language with a native, accent. They're able to go in and do things that are a lot easier to do than if I, as a white 60-year-old male, go in and not know the language and try to do something. And I think that can be our competitive advantage as a country.
I think that's really impactful. It made me think, pre-pandemic, we were really trying to work on globalizing our talent for that reason, because how we operate in different cultures, and as the world economy is changing and we're having to all operate in a global environment, we were really had a strategy to send a lot of people around the globe into different areas other than their home countries so they could learn different skill sets. Of course, during the pandemic, we had to unwind that a bit, but I look forward to the time when we can start back on that strategy, because it does make you a better leader when you have the diversity of perspective. We often think of diversity just as physical diversity, but there's so many different ways you can think about it, of, culture and perspective and, what you've learned and throughout your career in different experiences. And so, we really tried internally to develop our talent in that way so that they could better serve our end customer at the end of the day. So I look forward to a time when we can get back to those things as the business starts to recover.
I love what you guys both said about, hiring the diverse worker and hiring globally. We had an audience question that came in specifically about this topic. And, I think especially all of you have experience in Utah. You're either from here, went to school here. In Utah, we don't have the most diverse workforce. For companies that are here, what strategies would you encourage them to deploy to diversify their workforce and get more of that global perspective in their work, in their offices?
One of the first things that comes to me is where you recruit, right? I mean, there are so many amazing HBCU universities that have a huge pipeline of talent in the US. Also, when you look globally outside the US, there are a lot of talented people in all aspects of the world. But I think it all comes to where you start building your pipeline. Mm-hmm. And then also where you develop your talent internally. You may have talent in other states or other parts of your business globally, and then how do you develop them and bring them into Utah to build the diversity? But I agree, Utah is a challenge for that. But also coming out of Utah, I do appreciate the perspective of it is quite an inclusive culture, I think, because of the people going all over the world when they're young and going on missions, and people come to Utah for various reasons, and it is a more inclusive place in my view. And so I do think it's, how do you source the talent, and then how do you also develop your internal talent to get them to come into your business in the state? Those are two important things in my view of how you could improve your diversity.
I'm really proud of Taylor and his efforts in working with Howard University, which obviously is based here in Washington, D.C., but forming the partnership that he's working on for Howard to send students to Utah to attend summer semester at the University of Utah and work within the tech industry and some of the other companies in Utah that are looking to further diversify. I think strategies like that are excellent ways to bring about diversity and help companies source talent, get ideas on how to source that talent, and also help those diverse communities understand and know that, hey, there's great opportunity in a state like Utah where, it may not be one of the more diverse states out there. But I think Mindy touched on some really important factors as well. And I think about our own company and how we've evolved over the last 20 years or so. When you look at the mix of talent 15, 20 years ago, our general managers overseas were primarily American born. And we've really shifted that strategy and tried to grow talent within those cultures and within those countries. And now you'll see the majority of our general managers grew up within the cultures in which they're working. Another thing that we've done is we've developed a program called our Emerging Leaders Program in the United States here to identify minority and female talent at lower levels in the organization that we feel like have a really bright future and a lot of upside. And so we've invested in them, and we've had a few thousand individuals come through that program over the last 4 years. And it's been a great networking opportunity for them. It's been a great platform for them to continue to grow their careers and to look for new opportunities within the company. And so really identifying that talent within your organization to build more diversity at the higher levels of the organization is critically important. It's encouraging, minorities see people that they can relate to progressing and moving through an organization. It's inspiring. It gives them hope, and I think it deepens your ability to create diversity at the higher levels within an organization, which are going to serve the organization incredibly well because you're getting different perspectives, and you're becoming more attractive to people in all walks of life. And so it's a continual evolution, but there's so many great strategies that you can implement and employ to help grow diversity and deepen your cultural awareness as a company.
I just make the observation, a former colleague of mine, some of you probably know him, Lou Kramer, is involved in real estate out there in Salt Lake. And he's charged with trying to attract direct foreign investment from overseas markets to Utah. And one of the things I would say is that Salt Lake doesn't need to sell itself short. This idea of second language that's kind of been referenced, that there are a number of LDS missionaries that come back, they have a second language, they've got some exposure. That's a pretty powerful tool that I know he finds when he goes out to recruit in Europe or Asia, that there is this second language skill capability out there in the state. So something to keep in mind. Sometimes we don't always see the jewel that we're sitting on, and that is, I think, a real jewel for that state.
Some of the other things that hit my mind too while David was talking is to really look internally. Do you have policies or things that prohibit diversity? And one of the things that I saw that we, at Delta, we realized is we had all these qualifications in for jobs for this or that, this experience or that degree. And we had to ask ourselves, is it really necessary for that role? And so we've really tried to go through our roles and say, okay, does this really need a degree, or is experience okay for this role? And that does open up your aperture for your candidate pool. And also making sure that when you do hire people, you have a diverse panel, because we tend to naturally hire people that look like us or that think like us. And so really having diverse panels also helps open up the thinking. And it's not just a physical diversity, but maybe if you're in sales, you get somebody from revenue management to be on your panel, and somebody from, the airports in our world to be on your panel, to really help think about who is the best candidate and how can we move talent across our organization in a way that builds that pipeline up to be stronger and stronger cross-divisional leaders in our business.
Yeah, Mindy, I love hearing that. I think Marriott and Delta have a very similar culture, and that's something that has always made it easy for us to partner with you and vice versa. But you're exactly right. I remember when I was leading a regional team, trying to figure out how can we promote more diverse candidates internally. And we did just what you talked about, requiring jobs that are posted at the hotel level, at the regional level, et cetera, to require at least one candidate on the slate that is diverse or a female, and working hard to ensure that pay is equitable across all cultures, and and minority groups, as well as gender groups. And if you have specific goals and you work towards a process like that with specific goals, you can really make some meaningful progress. And it was really exciting and fun to see the number of general managers in our hotels and the diversity that we were able to change and flip through those efforts. So I think you made a really great point about your panels, your candidates, and how you're looking internally at your talent.
You've all spoken about how, the importance of hiring a diverse workforce and putting practices in place that make it easier to do those things and encourage everybody to hire diverse. And it's no secret that there's been some growing hostility and diversiveness, I can't speak, in our country. How have your companies work to create an inclusive and empathetic workspace where, after they're hired, after they've gone through that process, they still feel welcome and they still feel safe?
I'll start. I think we keep going back to values, but I do think it's where it all starts, and making sure that you live by your values and that they flow through your business. But also, we still have room to go, right? Our CEO was very public about, we have 43% of our employees that are diverse, but only 7% of our top leaders are diverse. And so he came out very publicly with a commitment to doubling the number of Black officers and directors that we have at Delta by 2025. And I think it starts there, leading at the top, showing that you have a commitment to diversity and that you're going to measure yourself on it and make it public, right? That's a tough thing to do, because now everybody's going to measure us on whether we meet that goal, but it is intentional. It is backed by data, which is important as well. And it shows everybody that we are committed to it and that we are going to live by our values. Really thinking of, how do you do that through your talent strategies and everything else, and your succession planning, and making sure that you're bringing people in that can grow in the business is important to get there. But I think first stating your intentions up front, and then that also speaks volumes to the people inside of your company that you have a commitment to it and you mean it, and that we value people of all backgrounds and want to see how they can grow through the business. And then that also speaks volumes to your customers, right? Because we want employees to reflect our customers, and we have global customers across the world. So our employees and our leadership should reflect the customers and the communities that we serve.
Alan, you want to jump in? And
Sure. I come at this from a small business point of view, and again, we are essentially a consulting firm, and then we manage 3 private equity funds, and so it's a fairly small group of people. But as I said previously, because we're operating in emerging markets, having diversity is actually an easy and understandable management goal, because that your those types of employees or partners are going to be more successful than others who may not understand the culture or the language or the other things that go into doing business in an emerging market. But I would concur with what Mindy said, that example is everything. If you take it seriously and actually you talk about compensation structures that reward that kind of behavior in your managers, that's a pretty powerful statement, and people can draw their conclusions and can see that you're truly committed to it. And I think it helps both for people who are coming new in the organization, because they know that there's a place for them to go, that they're not going to top out at a certain level and then they need to move on, that the organization really is committed to something like that is an important ingredient in the success of a small business like ours anyway.
Yeah, I think all these points are right on, and it really does start at the top. I think it starts with the CEO, it starts with the board of directors, and making sure that the right goals and objectives are in place. But I think when you talk about welcoming in a diverse workforce, if they see a diverse workforce around them, I mean, that helps significantly with their comfort level and their long-term sort of comfort and objectives with the company and the organization overall. We have a night every year where we celebrate our top associates around the globe that have really gone above and beyond. It's about 13 or 14 people a year that get recognized for really extraordinary efforts on the front lines and for everything that they're doing to take care of each other, our customers, et cetera. And it's always a very diverse platform of individuals that are being recognized. So I think recognition is another really important way of ensuring that a comfort level is created, and that minorities see that you're celebrating a workforce that looks like them and that comes from a background similar to theirs. So I think recognition is also incredibly important in creating a diverse work environment, and a diverse work environment where everyone can feel comfortable working within it.
It just hit me while David was talking, diversity is different in every country as well. And I think we often tend to use our US lens on what diversity means. But it is important when you talk about inclusion to really think about what that means in each location that you're operating in. And we've worked to deploy training also for our employees across the organization on an inclusive work environment, and really calling out unintentional bias to help us be more aware of it. And we've really worked hard to make sure that that training works for all of our locations across the globe. So I do think that continuing to train and educate people also becomes an important aspect of stopping, unconscious bias and racism in our business.
Mindy, that is such a great point, and I wouldn't have thought of it from that perspective of, we think of inclusion so much from our lens of the US, and it's definitely food for thought. We had an audience question come in that actually refers to something you had brought up earlier in terms of leaving that middle seat empty on Delta flights. They're wondering, making decisions that show empathy for employees and customers, especially during, the craziness of COVID, can sometimes be pretty financially difficult, as you mentioned earlier. How do you balance the need for empathy with the interest of shareholders on, a big scale and also a smaller scale?
Well, I can say from our perspective, I feel like we believe the safety of our employees and our customers comes first, and that's why that decision has been made. While flying is safe because of all that, we put in so many cleaning standards and masking requirements and, hand sanitizing stations all over. If you have flown, you can see it in action very visibly. Leaving the middle seat open, we just found that people aren't quite ready to sit that close to somebody. And so for us, we hope that will pay off in the long run. So sometimes you make a decision that financially might not be right in the short term, but in the long run, people will, be loyal to your company and fly you even more because of those decisions that did show empathy for them. And it's a scary time. People are worried, and that makes them feel more comfortable to fly on us, then that's a decision that our leadership has made. And again, we truly believe if you take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers, and the customers will take care of the shareholders. It might be a little longer play, but it's still an important thing to continue to consider. And our CEO is very values driven, and he has made some tough decisions, and they've turned out right. He's a great leader, and he's an inspirational leader. And this is one of those decisions that he and the board have made to leave those seats open. And we hope that it'll pay off in the long term with people choosing Delta.
I love that. Alan, I'd love to hear your perspective coming from a smaller company and your thoughts are on this.
So, I think in the US particularly, we have skewed things to where shareholder value has become the primary driver between corporate or in corporate America. When I went to graduate school, we had this quaint notion that there were, that there were stakeholders that all had to be considered by management, and it was the employees and the customer, and of course the shareholder, and even the community. And I think sometimes business can swing like a pendulum one way or the other. And I think the shareholder value part of that equation has for many years, maybe even decades, been out of whack. And I think maybe if there is a silver lining with COVID-19 is, I think there is some recognition of what Delta is doing, that, the customer is important, and the employees are important. And maybe that comes into more back into balance, where we do things not only to maximize the shareholder value, but to maximize the customer experience, and give the empathy and the support to the employees to make a more holistic and balanced approach to managing business.
I think that's right. I think if you take care of your associates, you take care of the customer, the shareholder is going to be rewarded in the long run. And so sometimes you have to make, different choices and different decisions. But like Mindy said, you have to put the safety of your customers, the safety of your associates first in all cases. And sometimes that means incurring cost to do so. We don't have a middle seat that we can leave open in the hotels, but we have restaurants that we've closed or allowing to operate at 25% capacity to ensure that people are safe, socially distanced. We have mask requirements in the hotels. We've invested a lot in our cleaning protocols. I chuckled, Mindy, when you talked about the electrostatic cleaners. We're using those in the hotels as well, in public spaces, giving our customers the choice. If they don't want daily housekeeping, that's fine, because we want to respect the fact that that they limit the number of people in their guest rooms, right? So we want it to be their choice. We want their stay to really be up to them. If they want daily housekeeping, they can opt into that. If they don't, we want to respect their space and allow them to have an environment that is comfortable for them. And we want to create a space that's safe, clean, for our associates to work within, where they feel like coming to work is a safe place to be. And that includes making sure that we're giving them temperature checks when they come in, and that they're filling out forms that help us to understand where they might have or may not have been exposed to COVID. And so it's really working together and keeping those core tenets in place of taking care of one another and taking care of the customers and the guests that come into your business.
Same for, you sparked on my mind too. We test our employees. We've worked with, a number of partners to make sure that tests are available. And we really do try to encourage our employees to get tested and get tested frequently so that we can stop the spread. Masking is important. We require it for our employees and our customers, of course. And I just think it's made our employment areas and our aircraft very safe.
So in our promotion of today's virtual panel, we opened it up to our alumni and students, faculty, staff, everybody, and asked them, who do you think of when you think of an empathetic global leader? And we got answers from, former President Obama to Brene Brown to President Ruth Watkins here at the University of Utah. And you are all global empathetic leaders yourself. So who do you look for leadership or advice or inspiration, especially in times like these?
Well, I had a boss when I had made a very large step in my career, from leading a team of about 9 people at a single hotel property to running our global sales organization and having 4,000 people roll up below my leadership. And to say that I felt overwhelmed with those new responsibilities was an understatement. But my boss showed forth incredible empathetic leadership. She came up through revenue management and finance, and was leading our global sales efforts. Hadn't spent a lot of time working at an individual property level, but was just a dynamic, very thoughtful leader. And I remember approaching her one day feeling very overwhelmed. It was my first executive role. I was being asked to do, a lot within the role, but I also had requests from my father, other family members who were wanting me to be various places and do different things at various times. I had a young family, and I was definitely feeling swamped and overwhelmed. And I went to her and I said, Amy, I said, I don't know what I need to change, but I need to change something, because my blood pressure is not behaving itself very well. I'm not getting the kind of exercise I should be getting. I'm not finding balance in my life. I'm not saying no to anybody. I'm trying to do everything in all places. And she asked a very simple question. She said, what are your 2 top priorities? So I laid that out for her. And she said, okay, this is your lens. This is your filter. Everything that you are asked to do, whether it's your father or whoever, I give you permission to say no to if what they're requesting doesn't fit within one of those 2 filters. And I immediately felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders, and was able to quickly readjust, prioritize better, and do my job much more effectively and efficiently. And I think, she could have easily gotten upset and said, hey, you're dropping the ball here and there. You're not getting deadline. You're not hitting deadlines the way that you should. But she took a step back and listened and offered an approach and some thoughts on how I could kind of reprioritize my work life and my home life. And it made all the difference in the world. And I have utilized that principle in every large role that I've gone into since then. And in fact, I use that in all aspects of my life. What are the top 2 priorities, and how do I make sure I knock the ball out of the park in those areas? And ultimately, there's a lot of sub priorities that fall underneath of that, but I found it very liberating. And it was because of the empathy of a leader that I respected that I was able to gain that important perspective.
So I'll make an observation, and this is maybe more generic, but in one of our funds, we make credit extensions in the range of $1 million to 10 million. And these are for import-export types of transactions. And as you will appreciate in this environment with COVID-19, businesses are not just large like Marriott and Delta, but small businesses particularly are being hurt because they don't have the cushion to weather the storm. And one of the things that has really been affirming to me is the sacrifices that those business people have taken to satisfy their requirements to the lender, which is always appreciated, but also for their employees. I mean, we've got a healthcare company who the executives have not taken any pay for a few months. And to me, it's in a world where we talk about division, and half the country's voted one way and half the other way, and you sometimes lose faith in people. These small business people, under very difficult and trying circumstances, at least in my small sample of borrowers, are really trying to do the right thing, both with their employees, with their lenders, and with the other stakeholders in their businesses. And that's really reaffirming for me anyway.
Yeah, I think for me, you could have big kind of empathetic, aspirational leaders, or more along the lines of what David said. And I'm going to choose one of those that was more of a personal situation. As a female in corporate America, I had 5 kids and trying to work, and I was a single mother. I had my daughter quite young and had to get my undergraduate and graduate degree. I got married during my undergraduate degree, but maneuvering through trying to build a career it's tough as a female, and trying to balance your family needs and the needs of work, and trying to be everything all at once is nearly impossible. And I've had a couple leaders throughout my career that really took the time to understand me as a person, and understand where my strengths were, and help me really build upon my strengths. And I think for me, the best thing somebody can do is give you feedback and help you understand that, because so many times we go forward and we don't see where we can grow ourselves. And if leaders don't take the time to give their people feedback, I always say you can't fix what you don't know. My team probably is so tired of me hearing that, but it is true. Oftentimes you don't see it in yourself, and if nobody tells you where you can improve or how you can further strengthen the strengths that you have, and use them in a way that is, maybe even more powerful for your business. So those are the leaders that I think about, the ones that have invested their time to help me grow, their time to know me as a person, understand where I can do better, or where my skills might be even better utilized. I was an HR professional my whole career, and one of my clients asked me to come work in the operation in the world's busiest airport. And I thought, there is no way. I've never worked in the operation, but I did it. And, that leader really helped me through, because he cared enough about me to really help teach me and help me grow in that way. And I am better at my job today for that experience, coming back into the HR world, really knowing the business in a different way. It makes me better at my job. And so I just think all those kinds of things, if you're thinking about how to help your people, give them feedback, help them grow, give them different experiences that you may think, oh, they've never done that, but they have the potential. And those are the things that I think about when I think about empathetic leadership.
Wow.
Feedback truly is a gift.
It
Yep.
is.
Yeah.
What Mindy said, I think, is the epitome of empathy, right? A mentor that reaches down and takes the time to listen and criticize. I mean, constructive criticism, obviously, and that's ultimately what an empathetic leader is.
Absolutely. I think, Alan, you left the perfect point for us to wrap our discussion up on today. I know we are just a couple minutes over, but I know I'm so grateful for all of you for taking the time to join us, our students and our alumni today. Your inspiring stories and your insightful knowledge on this topic, especially during a time like this. I hope all of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a great weekend. I'm going to toss it back over to Langsha for a few closing words. But again, thank you to our 3 panelists, Mindy, Alan, and David, for joining us today, and for all of your wonderful knowledge. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you all so much. And thank you to all of you at home and across the globe for tuning in today. We are so glad to have you join us and love seeing your comments and your questions come in through the chat. So we hope that you will continue joining us as we host these virtual events. We're going to take a little hiatus so that we can all enjoy Thanksgiving with families and spouses, partners, and enjoy the holiday. So we'll be back on Wednesday, December 2nd for our Eccles Alumni Forum. We're going to be talking about HR in the time of COVID. It's going to be a fantastic discussion with our partners at OC Tanner. So you're going to want to RSVP at eccles.link/forum. And then we are going to wrap up our road trip with Destination 2021, something that we are all very much looking forward to and looking towards the future of hospitality and tourism. So join us Thursday, December 3rd from 12 to 1 Pacific time. Again, RSVP at eccles.link/road trip. We look forward to seeing you tune into that discussion. As always, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our generous sponsor, CR England. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday afternoon, and go Utes!